Welcome to CDCon 2021. I am one of the speakers, Shlomo Bilak, CTO at Benchmark Corp. I'm going to cover the topic of one of our inventions to redesign the SDLC, destroy non-production. Essentially, we've coined the term non-production impermanence. We've prepared this specifically for all the continuous delivery practitioners out there that are looking for new methods that are not rear view mirror. I want to preface this discussion to say that we are not going to share anything you've seen before. The intent here is to redesign and reevaluate how we do the software development lifecycle and present more effective solutions to achieving high resiliency and high reliability of our environments. I want to cover a little bit about ourselves because I think it's important to understand that we are pioneering CI/CD solutions with burden-centric approach. We do very unique measurements when it comes to burden. We help other organizations measure that with our own IP. I'm going to share today one of our 9 reinventions of the SDLC. It comes from previous expertise as a head of SRE and a CISO at NCR, which is a Fortune 500. And we're now engineering new methods based on client practices and implementation. So we're the builders, the architects, the pioneers, and we're participating on a multitude of different organizations trying to contribute back intellectual property. So we advance our SDLC and the best practices that are out there and change what the rear view shows. So let's talk about impermanent non-production and how we achieve it. I think it's very important to understand the only way to go to impermanent non-production is if we do continuous deployment or scaling continuous deployment. What we mean by that is the creation of artifact and the delivery of that to non-production and the promotion process that gets it into a production environment is key. If you don't have that capability, it's really hard to remove the non-production system because you're not getting confidence for prod. How you achieve that is basically taking 2 pieces that are generally independently constructed in organizations because bailiwicks are independent, and there is some convergence that occurs, but it changes the overall architecture and archetype of a CI/CD process. If we take the orchestration pipeline for delivering infrastructure, converge that with an orchestration pipeline for delivering applications, use GitOps and CI/CD together, and create a secure on-demand environment. What I mean by that is not just the environment itself, but it has a live application. That doesn't stop there. When you operate that way, to get to impermanent non-prod, the collection of metrics and the confidence metrics you require for production are key. So you have to do some QA automation. I'm not going to get into either of these. We have unique reinventions of how to do QA automation and how to converge these 2 pipelines. Today, we're going to talk about how I get to non-production destruction and what that looks like and what your benefits are. The clock at the bottom with the pop is my invention. I just didn't have a way to distinguish. Once I use it and I'm finished, it doesn't need to exist anymore because it doesn't provide any value. So let's try to get into this. Keep in mind that this is for practitioners that have the ability to collect metrics in an automated or orchestrated way, and converging application delivery and infrastructure delivery. Now, it's very important to understand where people fail so that you don't repeat the same rear view, because if they're failing, you're going to fail the same reasons because you're not doing anything different. So I do take the context of 70 to 80% of organizations do a bad job of digital transformation, and we're trying to reinvent the process so that they don't fail. One of the key pieces is spend. And if you're not controlling your spend either on the refresh budget of your on-premise, which is part of your hybrid architecture, or if your public spend is continuing to grow because you just advanced and adopted additional data centers and you didn't manage or change how you operate, you're basically going to blow your budget. And that's one of the things that Spiceworks found is where the largest reason for people to not succeed in cloud was spend or exceeding their expected spend. There are metrics you need to consider, and this is going to come to why the non-production impermanence is key, and it's because you're no longer buying your car. You're now renting or leasing the car. And the idea behind that is if I leave a car in my driveway and I'm not using it, I wouldn't want to spend on it. So you have to change the method of how you operate in the cloud, and how do you achieve that using the SDLC? If I leave things sitting, it costs me money. Cloud native gives you the ability to create and destroy more frequently and easily and reliably. And you only need to persist when you need to, right? There's obviously areas that with data we have to talk about, but we're not going to get into the customer data permanence. But essentially, Gartner did a study. They're not looking at it the same way I was. I read the article and recognized that their focus was on overspend and oversizing. My focus was, if the metrics are true, I need to remove as much as I can, and I needed a solution. So 44% of spend on that study basically said it was non-production systems. You can probably go back to your engineering department. You'll find out the budget's extremely large. That is my background, is R&D. Over that time, 76% of it sat in the driveway doing nothing. It's just sitting idle. We wouldn't leave our car 3/4 of the week sitting doing nothing when we're not using it. So this is how we're operating non-production today. So non-production lives today due to inefficient SDLC best practices. It's entirely wrong, our SDLC. It has many gaps, and I'm only covering one of the corrections. We must include a destroy stage as part of the SDLC process after confident levels of metrics are collected, analyzed, and parsed to promote the code to the next environment. At which point, the environment that collected the metrics that are giving us that confidence is destroyed. You don't need it anymore. There is no customer value, and I reiterate, coming from an engineering department, there's no customer value in non-production. None. It has no SLAs, yet we keep it. The logic behind it is very flawed. Again, because our SDLC is aged. I'm going to move into, let's also investigate what it does to you if you reduce your burden. Everybody knows that burden is our focus, but it's also a measurement that you can do. And this is just a snippet from one of our applications. We measure all of our customers, right? So if non-production value is only confidence for production, then I don't want things to persist because it causes toil and it supports brittleness. The longer I keep something running, the less likely I'm going to find problems with it. It's logic. If I leave an environment running and people make changes or use it because they're not doing proper process or pipelines, again, you're going to cause toil for those who have to operate those systems and find out what's wrong with them because you're not destroying them. Destroying is the ultimate and basically breeds the chaos engineering process directly into the SDLC because you're doing the ultimate. You're destroying and starting over. Again, if you look at aggregate hours of burden on the SDLC, the entire SDLC is what we measure, we find that a very small slice is production. Like you can see here that almost 80 to 90% is non-production systems. 80 to 90% of burden, I know engineers won't believe me or devs won't believe me. I'm sure the ops understand that it's true. Almost 80 to 90% of burden is non-production. We persist these environments. There's no reason. We need to work on delivering apps more consistently through pipelines. We need to work on delivering our infrastructure with those applications, get some QA automation done. I can't cover everything here, but when you achieve those goals, change the SDLC and destroy those environments so you stop the sweat and burden of non-production systems. Again, non-prod exists for production and the customer. No other reason. I'm going to show examples. These are example pipeline. I know we're at CDCon. The bottom one is an example of Jenkins. CI/CD, depending on some of the providers that you use, GitLab, GitHub Actions, Azure Pipelines, whatever you're using, Jenkins or Blue Ocean, whatever your choice is, all of them have the capability of redesigning the SDLC and how they all function. All of these function the same way, yet they're 3 independent live demos of different products, but they achieve the same methods. I create my infrastructure, I build my artifact, I check my artifact, I deploy that artifact, I do performance testing, I collect my metrics and pass my security gates, destroy that environment, and then go through the next promotion process. And that destroy piece saves you 50% almost of your budget. The reason being is you have total cost to operate non-production, which is a big budget, and the actual dollars spent on either the infrastructure required for all of them to persist or the cloud spend where these environments run. This is huge, yet we're not doing it. It's very logical. This is an example I like to share. Look, reuse what you got. Don't get me wrong. You could add this capability in any of your pipelines today. You just have to think differently and orchestrate at a higher level. In this example, this was a cloud native methodology for Google. This was implemented at clients before. The clock and the pop is essentially the context behind blowing away the build environment, blowing away the non-production environments, which could be staging, performance, development, QA. Again, you're going to have so few environments persisting. You won't need so many of them because you can just bring them up with the profile you require and destroy them afterwards rather than having so many persist. Our need to persist is what's actually causing the inefficiency of the SDLC. Only production needs to persist. There are some very big advantages, and I'm going to get to them after this, which is essentially by destroying non-production, we reduce day two toil, we improve resilience, we take chaos value, build it into the SDLC process, and it allows us, to the last point, it allows us to match production. This is the most important piece that I didn't touch on yet because I wanted to build up to this, is if I don't persist environments, I can match production 100%, data, size, because I'm not leaving the environment that would eat up dollars. The only reason non-production doesn't look like production is because we're trying to save money on it because we know it's going to sit there forever. That is wrong. No one needs access to these environments. These environments and deliveries need to be entirely orchestrated. They need to be created by that orchestration, destroyed by that orchestration, and then we will increase the confidence to production to the point of 100% reliability. I know that challenges Google's SRE practices. We've published white papers on this. It's entirely possible. You can achieve 100% availability and reliability if all the previous stages are duplicates of production under considerable stress and burden, but you run them for very short periods of time based on need and then destroy them. You can't copy prod, otherwise your budgets will be so big. Now, the core of everything and why we do burden focus is automation. And you can coin me saying this. Automation adds toil. Anybody that focuses on automation will not solve any of their business problems. They will only add burden and SME domain expertise to their resources and increase the requirements of their talent pool. Orchestration of the automation and its capabilities removes toil. That's building repeatability and outcomes in a rapid fashion. That's how you get continuous improvement. I'm just giving you pieces of it that if I do go down that path, I need to have very strong business cases for benefits so that I can spend that upfront time to build it because it does take extra work. But the payout is any velocity you want. It's not fast. It's not slow. It's chosen velocity because that is the metric you need to enable. That's the capability you need to enable. It's not about fast or how many because those metrics lie. Chosen velocity is independent of burden. With burden, you have fixed speed. Remove the burden, you have chosen velocity. This is key. I just wanted to say thank you very much to the Continuous Delivery Foundation for putting the CDCon together, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the Q&A. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I wasn't too passionate here, but I thought this was a really cool session that I could share with you some of our insights that we're doing with our customers today. Thanks so much, and take care. All right. I think I'm on visual now, so maybe I can answer the questions as people come in. I know that my volume was too high. I had to lower my own volume. But The question about the OpenShift and Kubernetes, I've run very large OpenShift environments. I've run them on Google, AWS, VMware. Haven't done it in Azure. But the context behind it is OpenShift as a cluster. I think it's about 32 minutes. D2IQ is about 28 minutes. GKE is a little less than that. Depends on how fast they come up. But it's an entire cluster. It's not namespaces. You're codifying the namespace, the project requirements, the pod requirements, your Helm requirements. You deploy the entire environment as needed. If you have multiple applications within a cluster and they're not independent, obviously you would only be destroying, as you said, particular namespaces. But you really can create the option where you don't even persist the clusters themselves, because everybody's running their independent pipeline, but you only need to check the one that's needing to release. So none of them should persist, and when it's needed, it'll build. So a state file can include its integration requirements within the Terraform. So if you include the integration requirements, you would deploy all the dependency applications within the one you need to test, so that you wouldn't get in a stuck position where the apps you need to test with don't exist. This is where it gets a little more complex, but the benefits are vast. We do this for our clients today on a regular basis. It is our norm of SDLC. I'm sharing with the world now because it's changed our lives, right? Brittleness is gone, and deployment is at any pace you want. I'm open to any questions that you have. It doesn't have to be specific to this. This is just one of 9 reinventions of the SDLC that I was trying to share. I thought it was very relevant to SREs and CDCon. But if you have, hopefully I'm audible. Can someone let me know if I'm audible? Yes? I'll call out Sean. Yes? Okay, good. If you have any questions, like in depth, I can jump into any depth you'd like. Or if you have just generalized questions on why we went down this path. I would say it's on the upper end of SRE capabilities. The reason being is you already have to be able to have a mature GitOps practice, as well as a good CI/CD process that converged. And your QA automation is key. If you need, I'll make sure that people get them. The most important piece really is the QA automation. I can't cover that in this amount of time. The QA automation I've done independently at Unscripted. Unscripted, if you want to look it up, I did a conference last week, or maybe it was this week. I don't know. I do a few, where you can watch QA automation, observability for non-prod, forget production, was the session name. So should the practice be scheduled or office hours or on demand? So I kind of find it should be Git triggered. But not everybody lives that way. So what you can do is you can integrate change management as part of the process, where if you need to add scheduled or office hours, it would go to the ITSM, such as ServiceNow field where you have approved change window, or the status within Jira in your workflows, however you'd like it. The pipelines should depend on your ITSM or Jira, meaning your tickets that you're tracking, your releases, where it would use that to decide when to run. Those integrations are available in all CI/CD providers. Maybe you have to enhance them a little bit using REST APIs, but that's how we'd be doing it today. If you want on demand, it's Git triggered. If you want scheduled or office hours, it's based on the ITSM approved stages. Generally, that only applies to staging and non-production, while the other environments don't really need to have scheduled. As long as you have one piece, which is very important, is a waiting of each of your releases, so that if one person releases and commits at the same time you do, you don't have convoluted results in a shared deployment or a shared performance test using the same environment, because Terraform will build out the components as required, but it's not going to tell you someone else is running a test at the same time. So you do need to wait your releases. That way an environment run doesn't go over another commit within another resource that shares the same resources. It happens natively in some providers. I know Harness does that, where you can actually do performance weighting, where a release pipeline itself has an environment weight. And if it's 100, nothing else can run. It all gets queued in their deployment pipeline. Not everything has that. You can build that in, though. The logic that if it's running, that others can't at the same time, it needs to be queued. Any more like go? I hope that helped. Yeah, I know I go all over the place and I generally run hyper. That's because I ate some cake right before the session, so I have a sugar high. I'm trying to think. We have a lot of clients today that haven't recognized these transformations. And what essentially happens is their budget gets ballooned and then they don't have funds to hire people like yourself. That's the key is support the talent pool by doing people metrics, which is the burden of the pipeline itself. And the moment that you drive those hours of the pipeline down to almost zero, that is when you can run at any velocity you want, which is really what an SRE should be targeting. Because that's providing value to the business at the rate and pace the business wants, rather than misconstrued metrics which hurt all your talent pool. I don't know how many people here, I've been in an organization where I met my metrics, but the reality was a lot of work. And it doesn't need to be. There should be a lot of work on innovation, not a lot of work on deployments themselves. It's just very, very poor SDLC best practices. I don't know how else to say it. But if you look what published by Gartner and others, the SDLC is not a logical process today. It needs a lot of improvements, this being one of them. Do I have this methodology documented via GitHub or something? I can publish, if you want to, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email out there. I do have the pipelines in GitHub that I can share. Just put my email. I am quite open with sharing. I think it would be nice if someone could have a copy of the pipeline, especially Jenkins. I kind of feel like Jenkins is where most development teams are. We do have it for GitHub Actions, Azure Pipelines, GitLab, Jenkins, and Harness. We do it across all the CI/CD. The reason being is every customer is different. But the process at which the SDLC runs is consistent. Every single one has the same stages and promotion methods. It's just what is great. Like that's the definition of why we did this. What is a great archetype of CI/CD? What is a great archetype that supports SRE practices and confidence for production? And surprisingly, it's destruction. You can't persist drift. You can't persist brittleness. You can't hide anything. And you match prod as close as possible because you don't run it for long and no one wants to give you money. So it matches really well. And then if you really move observability into non-production, I wouldn't be surprised if everybody here runs an APM in prod, but in non-prod you couldn't afford it. Remove it from prod, focus that budget on non-prod, build your confidence, and then prod is a non-event. This is again one of those really poor SDLC methods, thinking prod is where the value is. It is true, it's the customer value, but the value the confidence has to be built in non-prod. I don't want to go too many different avenues, but if you do very great observability matching production, 100% reliability I've done for a year. Like it's not hard to achieve 100% availability for a year. It's just you have to build up to that capability and then make sure that your observability is higher or equivalent in non-prod than in prod, which is one of the greatest mistakes we make today, is we protect where the customers are, but we don't protect the confidence that goes into it. It's just so many things I'd like to share, but that is key. I touched on it that QA automation is one of the prerequisites, but the reality is we don't spend in non-production our observability. Yet how do I then build confidence for what goes to the environment? So I'm being proactive in the wrong environment, which is astonishing to me, which is why I've changed for years the way I operate. Is non-prod is where I invest and then destroy, and then production is nothing. You run it at 9 a.m., you run it at 10 a.m., you run it at whenever you want. Nothing's going to happen. You've done a rinse and repeat of duplicate environments under considerable stress higher than prod. Prod ain't going to fall over. They're duplicate environments. They're coded the same. The only difference is I've destroyed non-prod even more than, well, obviously much more than prod. You don't destroy prod. But you've seen the brittleness and pushed it to its limits. If there's any questions on other areas, let me know. I'm quite open, or if there's asks that you'd like, just let me know. I can get the GitHub where you can get access to Jenkins pipelines. I think that's generally the easiest and most commonly used CI/CD process today. You have a chance to ask any questions that you want. They can be in any technical stack or any cloud. No more? Okay, perfect. I mean, I don't want to just take up people's time. I thank those for attending. Hopefully you've taken away different methods and it excites you. These types of things are really exciting. And it makes your lives better because, to be honest with you, I take this from an empathy approach. I've been an SRE for many years. It's a hard job. It's a hard job because you know what's better, but also you're a hero. It's the removal of the hero that I'm trying to do here. Is deployments should occur without the SRE. It's the confidence towards production that the SRE should focus, so that the non-event and his evenings and weekends are protected. That is my focus, the removal of talent heroics. And that is where SREs will then become more abundant because it's not a very high task or burden job that you have to be here all the time. Kind of feel burnout was the only option with the old methods. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you for the agreement too. And if you have any questions, I put my email. Also from a concept perspective, all those pipelines that I shared are actually live in customers. Enterprises, I would say one of the more advanced enterprises now. They may not have been when they started, but they are now. And their methods do allow for deployments at any time. And yes, their SLAs do achieve 100%. Last takers of questions for those who persisted. Alrighty, I think I'm supposed to click the leave button. Thanks so much for attending and watching, and cheers, take care. And if you see any scratches, that's from mountain biking. Cheers, take care all.